Welcome to another Learning Council podcast. This is Leilani Cawthon, CEO of Learning Council News Media and Research. And I have with me an important guest. I'm super excited about him. I've known him for several years, Matt Yeager, who's the Assistant Superintendent of Technology for Garland ISD down there in Dallas, Texas. And last time I was there with you, I was in your facilities, your awesome central, like there was unbelievable stuff going on there with all kinds of cool technology. So nice to have you on board, Matt.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, let's give like a little background about you first, like how long you've been there, what's going on, your role, what else you've been doing in life.
All right. Well, like you said, my name is Matt Yeager. I'm currently the Assistant Superintendent of Technology for Garland ISD, which is the second largest school district in Dallas County. So we're the brother, I guess you could say, to Dallas ISD right next to here in Dallas County. We have about 52,000 students, 72 facilities, and we're in the heart of the Metroplex. And so, I've been here for about 6 years. I've previously been a CTO at other school districts, both small and medium and large school districts. So I've been around. I've been in education for about 20 years now. So I'm excited to kind of tell you what I think about what's going on and new directions we can go forward with in the future.
Okay, great. And our topic for the day is the big conundrum, logistics and tailored learning. Okay, so I know you're familiar with both these areas, and so we're going to get into them. But before we do, let's tell everybody what that means behind you, impact, like what that means and where that came from.
Well, so this word right here created basically a central word for my team. So we have a guiding principle with our team. So I in impact is innovative. So anything we do, we need to make sure we're innovative. M is mobile. So that means we're a connected, moving around environment for our learners. P is personalized. So anything we do, we try to make it personalized. And A is definitely when we need to make sure it's academic. We need to make sure we're following the same things we do within the state and everything else. And then C is collaborative. We're a big team. So we got to have ideas and we collaborate with each other. And then T is that new thing, transformative, taking something and making it new, not replacing. So that's the key thing at the very end is making sure our whole goals are transformative as we go. And so this is a guiding word that we've been focusing around to make sure that we're all moving in the same direction. We have a large enterprise in Garland, and most big districts have big enterprises. And so moving everyone in the same direction is very critical to make sure that every learner and teacher and support staff have the tools necessary to teach.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of that because I often forget that so many school districts, you're large enterprises. There's like a lot of people. And it means for a sort of different posture and a different how you do things every day than smaller organizations. I've run into superintendents that are also the bus driver, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they're really tiny. And there's a totally different sort of way of life when you're a really large district. But it means you also have lots and lots of kids running around. Okay, so let's get into this topic then. That was a great background. The topic really about logistics and tailored learning, the conundrum in that is that schools have not really been purveyors of using or users of logistics. They have been people that are siloed. So you've got many different departments, and there's the finance department, and over here's human resources who's hiring teachers and doing things, and then the people are getting assigned out, and it's sort of a pyramid of importance and cobbled together allegiances everywhere. But then the teacher is really also their own little silo behind a closed door in a classroom, right? So when I think logistics, I think of like what it's like to get a box anywhere in the world if I'm FedEx, right, in 24 hours. That's logistics, baby. Or maybe that's UPS's tagline. But logistics is really important to talk about right now, because if we're going to aim at what you were saying to me earlier before we started this podcast about tailored learning, like being able to really be specific to that child, which is a little bit along the same lines as personalization and differentiation and customization for the child, then you really have to start getting serious about how you're executing and delivering individual things. Am I right? So,
That's correct.
so you go. What are your thoughts on logistics, and then how do we get to tailored learning?
Well, I would say logistics just define your path, and so just like with FedEx and all that stuff, logistics defines the path it needs to take to get to the outcome or the location. And so no matter which way it goes, the key is it gets there. And
Mhm.
so it's time and space is different, maybe with a different package. One package goes this way, one package goes this way, and by the time it gets to the location, it's there and the customer is satisfied. And so logistics really just turns what are we doing? For instance, in a normal traditional classroom, logistics may mean everyone sit there and turn in the paper at the exact same time at the front of the class. That's a
Mhm.
logistical process. But with tailored learning, it's learner agency. Students have control or ownership of that path and allowing the system or logistical system to help guide that path to the same outcome. So it kind of allows people to kind of crisscross and be a little all over the place a little bit instead of straight
Yeah.
down the middle. And it kind of
Mhm.
gives them that goal to the outcome, but it's still a process. It still gets
Yeah.
there. That's the key with the logistics.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Because a lot of times when schools talk to me about, like, we do pace-based learning, and I dig into it, right? And I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Because people, like, the definitions are all over the place. Oh yeah, we personalize learning. Do you really? So like, I had a conversation recently. Pace-based learning is really almost exactly the same in the minds of people who talk about it in a lot of institutions as online learning, which is characterized as, we stick you on a course, you do all of the reading and things, right? Watching videos, whatever. Well, and then when we're okay with what you just finished, right? You turn in something, and then we're okay. Okay, go on to the next step, right? But essentially, it's kind of teacherless, you know, which is what the big problem with online learning was. Kids need human intersection, right? Like, they need somebody going, get going on your next step. And so many online institutions have said, I'm sorry, but the attrition rate, like, people get lost along the way, they just fall off the road, or the pathway, as you called it, and they don't arrive at the other end of completing the course, is very, very common in online learning. Um, and the antithesis of that is the pace-based, when you're in school, is really just somebody looking over your shoulder once in a while and going, okay, we all need to be on this next step. So in other words, the pace is still, everybody has to pace together, but they're still not teaching. There's just sit there and do your own thing. But then you're sort of horsewhipped along. Um, so those are really the two flavors that I see. And I want to talk about a third flavor, but I'm going to stop there and let you comment.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, I would always say that having that teacher guided where everyone is doing the same thing like online, it's still a guided worksheet. It's not that T what I was talking about here. It's not
Yeah.
transforming the way learning's happening. It's really just taking a guided paper and you can either pause it or stop it. Pause it or stop it is really a pace base. It's nothing else, nothing different than that. It's just really you control the time, not the deviation, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the key thing.
Yeah. And am I wrong about it? Because you probably see a lot of teachers really frequently, more than I do, probably. Uh, Teachers don't really want to do it that way because they want to teach, right? Like, they've been trained to run a group. It's one of their pride and joys, being able to stand up in front of a large number of children, and run them and say things to them with words out of their mouths, and then hand out stuff. Like, they don't want to just occasionally check in on you because you're in their room. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's they're used to and comfortable with a traditional rubric style of teaching,
Yeah.
and so they're designed. Teachers are molded and designed to teach a rubric to get an average outcome within the
Mhm.
state, within whatever. And so it's designed that way right now. Traditional learning is designed in a rubric style course where everyone has to fit this step by step, and the teachers are really not necessarily guiding, but really forcing that movement down that rubric of model. And so this
Yeah.
kind of logistically turns that upside down a little bit and actually produces a courage of trying to really try new things so that student engagement is impacted and in insightful learning, let me put it that way, additional learning happens outside of just what that worksheet provides.
Yeah, and I find that interesting. So you kind of jumped ahead of me there. I'm gonna explain to everybody that's watching us, listening, what the heck are they talking about? There's a different kind of pace-based learning. There, what? Right? But yes, there is. And if you haven't listened to any of my shows, you don't know this at all. But I'm talking about a shift, a metamorphosis, a transformation. I like the word transformation. Of moving education through a new AI, which is AI calendaring, which can actually take your whole group and say, okay, everybody start, maybe they start at the same starting line, maybe they start at different points in a course based on their testing out, but basically auto cohorting them to arrive at a teaching moment. So in other words, put the teaching back in pace, which is what teachers want. They probably want to auto cohort, and they probably try to do that in their classrooms to customize and personalize. Like, you super smart kids, sit over here, and you medium kids, we're going to do this together. And then you wanted to run a little bit behind. I don't know why, but you are. But let's just spend a little bit more time on you. This technology basically allows you to, as a student, do what is pace-based learning, commonly defined, like read my stuff, watch my stuff, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm ready, click, right? And then you're enrolled in a meeting, but maybe it doesn't trigger right away because it's waiting for 8 more kids. There's supposed to be 10 total, and then it will put the meeting on the calendar. And then a little thing pops up and says, hey, go to room 101B. There's going to be a discussion on chapter 1. Here's what I like about this whole vision. Okay. And there's probably a lot more to say about it. I'm really, really fast in saying what I did say. The live intersection of people with people, there's much research, there's a lot of research about it that basically indicates there's higher learning for some people. Other people like to be purely online, right? Like they don't want humans talking with their mouths, but they being around other people, and then somebody else asks a really super smart question that you didn't think about, you learn something from that. What do you have to say to that? Because I think, we've got 2 roads. We've had 2 roads for a really long time, and now we're talking about tailoring learning. Am I right about thinking that there's really something there to make sure that we keep the teacher intersection?
Yeah, I mean, we still have to produce outcomes. So no matter what state you live in, everyone has an outcome they have to produce, an accountability that they have to have. And so we're not differentiating out of that accountability needs. We're just really tailoring to say we're not only teaching the one category of the TEKS or whatever we're trying to knowledge and skills, but we're actually adding to it so that they can bridge upon the interdependence of their classmates that are in the same boat. And so that's kind of that cohorting, bringing together like-minded or either supportive other peers to help understand that learning and be in that same room. Because lo and behold, when you're in a classroom with 25, 30, whatever, and the 10% get it, and the teacher is trying to teach to the low end people to get them back up to average, well, everyone else is just sitting there going, what are you talking about? We're trying to reteach something and they're already past it. Well, you can cohort and move kids around. And it brings something that's meaningful and allows them to really work that way. Because we don't work singular, we work in pods of people in life. And so that's the key thing. We're working with like-minded people and or people that can benefit. They have a strength here while you have a weakness here. That's okay, and you bring that together to learn, and that's, we have to look, we have to understand that everyone's on different platforms and planes, and bringing a small cohort together automatically, let me put it that way, without a teacher going, okay, you over here. And so it takes away that teacher's time to really divide and move kids around. It's going to auto with AI, and we can go into all AI stuff in a little bit. But, the key thing is that taking that time away from the teachers to do all that while the kids are progressing in their path, in their logistical path. So.
Yeah. And I love the idea, like how this tailors, right? So, I mean, often I've said it's personalized learning, this vision of where things are going to go, the shift of space and time, people in home, all the kids in homerooms, or maybe they're still in the same sort of classroom master schedule structure, but auto cohorted within the dynamics of the Carnegie unit 45 minutes. That would make it a little constricted. It wouldn't work as well, I don't think. But let's say we take them all out and put them in the homerooms, then we they sort of look like little flights taking off to a room, and then they come back, and then three other ones go over here, and six come from another homeroom and go over here, and then they get flighted back. But it's triggered randomly in different patterns because different kids are moving at different paces. It's truly different in pace. It's truly different in ability levels and skill levels as you go along. So it's really truly tailoring around you, but it's maybe the same stuff. And you just said something a few minutes ago about different stuff at different levels. Now that gets really interesting because in my mind, I've got these pathways. They're basically big highways, like a highway of math, go down this highway, and where are you at on the highway versus these other kids? And then language and, the core, and then maybe some extracurricular highways. You were talking about side roads and byways, right? That's fascinating because then we're in a totally different ballgame. Go ahead and tell me more about sort of what you're thinking with that, because now I've got layers on layers in my mind of how this could work.
Yeah. And I'm a tech person that has to speak very logically and actually has to speak apples to apples with most administrators. So I'm actually going to I try to give little analogies like we're going down the highway, we're driving from Dallas to Austin. Well, driving your family or whatever, you have to make some exits, to get off, to go eat, use the restroom, get gas, whatever, and it may not take the same time that everyone going to Austin is. And so if you have a group of friends, we're all taking different stops, we're all taking different detours, and you're learning on the way. You're seeing different things, you're learning new things, you have different experiences all the way through it. But in the end run, we're still going to Austin, if that makes sense. And so we're still getting there, but we're taking these little side roads, by roads, and we're still having a different adventure, but yet you're still learning the outcome. You're still getting to where you need to go. It's just trying to go and differentiate between each individual car per se, in a nice simple way of putting that. You're just trying to, and the system, the online system is really tailoring them and moving them into that guided tour, to each individual's path. And so that's kind of what how I think that is. It's not just everyone on an assembly line or everyone on a highway. You're able to step off and take some things and do some things and learn some things, talk to your peer, come back on the highway, get back to this, stop over here, and so that kind of starts moving everyone up. So like, a kid with the race car doesn't care, the top 10 kids are already in Austin and they're sitting there waiting, or they're going to move on to something else while other kids are in different sections of the highway. So it's a way of thinking of it.
Yeah, I like the way you're thinking because, the guy in the super fast sports car who's young and has like a young bladder, he just got all the way down there to Austin without stopping, right? And then the guy who's got 10 kids in the car and grandma had to make 5 stops, right? So, right. Yeah, I get it. Well, what we're really talking about now is we're putting people in a mindset of there's a conundrum here logistically between the old way of doing things where you have to keep the herd together. You're basically a shepherd as a teacher, and you're delivering the same exact lesson and everybody better get it. And then you try to personalize by saying to people different, like wandering around the room at one point, maybe for 10 minutes at the end of the hour, and commenting to somebody, this is what this means, and putting it in their words, right? Or keeping them after to personalize, or giving them a different set of resources, right? That's quote unquote personalizing, but everybody's got to stay together, family, like they're tethered. Versus true pace space, right? So you got the sports car and you got the guy in the old bus who's basically got a huge number of kids in the bus and he's going really slow with grandma. And then you took it beyond that, where you've got stops. Right now it's tailoring, whereas like you're going to be over here for like a good hour for lunch, right? Like you're going to stop over here and you're going to maybe do something no one else does but you, right? I think there's other roads to get from Dallas to Austin too, right? Like, so maybe this is the super highway, you can go really fast and all the big trucks are on it. And then there's like the side roads that take really long, there's a lot of stop signs, there's possibly cows on the road. That's a totally different road. It has totally different everything, right? But it still gets to Austin. Is that what you're sort of communicating?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, you don't always have to have the same group of 25 kids really even going down, you don't have to guide them down that highway. They could go to many different side roads, but the ultimate goal and the outcome is they're in Austin. Don't
Yeah.
don't shove them into a pathway that they have to go, even though
Yes.
you make these little small deviations. You're talking about true deviation where they
Yeah.
can actually go and be on any road, the mini
Mhm.
roads, and it could take normally 3 hours. It could take 4 hours. It could take 5 hours. It just depends on what road you took and how you got there. But there's learning all the way on the way. You learned what you saw. You learned your experience. And so, trying to guide that and understand that that is available for students to do is mind blowing. I mean, that's something that
Yeah.
kids are just like, wow, that it
Wow.
brings encouragement, engagement. Our goal is to engage kids on a consistent basis.
Well,
If they're already
and
lost,
yeah. What I love about what you just did is we just sort of like, just to summarize where we went with this conversation so far is logistics is about not just what the teacher does, what the school does, the or whole overall administration. It's about what resources, which kid for time, how much space, right? It's about time and resources and how much teacherness is teaching. Like, how much did I go to a lecture for this course? Didn't need to go to like how many lectures were there? How many discussions were there? Was there some hands-on stuff along the way? Was it all just reading stuff? Like, what was it? In other words, there's all these different levers, but in traditional public education, and this is why I like the way you have used the word transformative, there hasn't always been all the levers, right? The use of time and the individual path not doesn't exist. Everybody's got to stay together. Like, let's all go. Like, we got to get these standards done. There's a test coming up. Everybody in the
mm-hmm,
same place. I'm sorry, these ones got left behind. It's like they're triaging. Some of the kids are just going to get failure, right?
mm-hmm,
That's not acceptable anymore. Um, so this is why we're talking about logistics. I'm going to go on because I have
mm-hmm.
other questions for you, and I guess keep rattling on. So when you think about the imperatives, because you're going to come at this from a ideological point of view, but also a technology point of view. What are the
Mm-hmm.
imperatives for tailoring? Like, what do schools really have to think about now? What do they need to lead?
I, I think it's school leadership. I mean, uh, to truly get tailored learning, we have to allow from the top all the way through the teachers to have the courage to allow transformational learning to truly happen. And I know it's a hard thing to actually apply sometimes, but it's true. It has to be a top, all the way up to the top as a leadership strategy to make that impact. Because if you're waiting on a teacher to do it, they're going to be hogtied to getting the accountability, getting this test score. They're going to get their AP or their supervisor to really be on them about, you getting these kids, get these 5 kids, you've been in your data dive. This is what the 5 kids are. They're going to be hounded by that. We need to have a more school leadership, district leadership at all levels to have a transformational change in the mindset to understand that the deviation of this and logistical deviation is allowable, and we're supporting them in that effort. Most district administrators, we're supportive. We have to support what's happening in the campuses. And so those are key things that have to happen, I think.
Yeah.
And then we have to have the solutions to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, because we're not talking about, like one mild adjustment. Hey, could you use yellow chalk today? No, 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 no. We're talking about, let's do something truly transformative. And yeah, the biggest barrier is really not the technology anymore, is it? It's the people. It's
Uh,
definitely, yeah, we don't want to say that out loud. Shh, shh,
yeah.
Matt. Well, yeah. So, so you've been embroiled also in a lot of connectivity stuff, right?
Mhm.
Which is a stage that you have to really nail in order to get to do anything transformative. Because technology is underlying everything schools do now. But also you've been doing that because of need to push equity for students and access. So how's that been going? What have you been through there in order to get to even talk about tailored learning?
Well, it's I guess the pandemic was very bad, but it's also a very good eye opener to allow us to understand who doesn't have what. And connectivity and learning go hand in hand. It should not be two separate things. We take it for granted that most of us have always had, whenever the internet was there, the internet. But I know
Mhm.
my kids go crazy when it blips for 1 second and they can't do whatever. I mean, so you'd be surprised at people what they don't have, they don't know they don't have, and what
Yeah.
resources they could use to have it. And so I've part of my biggest mission in life and my biggest impact that I'm going to do is to create and develop broadband across the state of Texas. And so with that, Governor Abbott, our governor of Texas, appointed me on the governor's broadband development council the past year or so. And with that, the goal is to create information and reports to the governor regarding broadband across the state of Texas. And so, we do mapping, we do resources, and see what's available on an equity standpoint across all cities, towns, schools across Texas. And you'll be surprised of how many people that don't have the basic necessity of internet across the state. Even I would even say, and I'm going to even say this too, is in Dallas County, where I'm in, our Garland kids, we're 80% in Garland, we're 80% economic disadvantage. 80% economic disadvantage.
Wow, I
And so
wouldn't
out
have
of the
thought
50,
that about Garland. I wouldn't have
I know
thought that.
most people don't know that, but that is like 40 something thousand kids that are low income. That is crazy. And during the pandemic,
Yeah.
we did a survey and we had 15,000 kids indicate that they didn't have internet in Dallas County. And so there's plenty of available stuff for them. It's just there's an affordability rate. And so it's a part of my personal mission is to make sure that we get connectivity out to all learners, no matter who they are, where they're at. And I think now we did one-to-one initiative. That was a big push a long time ago. It's the
Hmm.
same thing. We give one-to-one and connectivity. We have to pair those together as a resource so that they can do this tailored learning, that there's no boundaries. The key
Yeah.
with learning is there's no boundaries.
Yeah.
We always try to put kids in classrooms as the boundary of learning. No, we need to break that up. And now connectivity, one-to-one devices, systems now allow learning to be 24/7, no matter where they're at.
Yeah, it's really, haven't we been saying this for years though? It's a human right now to have internet access. It just is. And it's really surprising. Well, our government obviously has really been distracted with a million other things lately, but it should have come up 10 years ago, like 15 years ago. Somebody should have stepped up and said, this is human right now. Let's just make it part of what everybody gets. Like, let's just nail it, right? We did that with phones. Remember when phones, there was a lifeline string. Da, da, da. I mean, I am always shocked that young people don't even use their mobile phone. They don't call anybody. It's all texting and internet, right? That's like talking. Yeah, it's very funny. Okay, so let's go on to this other thing, and then we should probably wrap it up. We've got one last question that I have for you, because we said that this is a big conundrum. Um, so let's touch on strategic planning. Okay. It's my experience, and I hope I don't offend you because you're a senior manager in a school district, but it's my experience that a lot of what's called strategic planning in schools and districts is a lofty goal statement, execution through the ranks with actual statistics coming back in, like, yes, I executed on program one, sir, right? Sir, yes, sir. This doesn't occur. Like, it's sort of like a lofty goal statement with some maybe a program, like let's do STEM, right? And then it's sort of dwindles away in terms of, okay, yeah, we did a strategy. That's not strategy. Am I offending you by telling you? No?
No, not at
Okay.
all. Because my
Okay.
mission is to change strategy to make the true impact. Like it's that ROI. What's the true return on investment? Well, in education, the reason strategy doesn't become an ROI like other businesses use, is because we're at a goal of just giving resources constantly to
Yeah.
and push them down, and we're not taking that data and really utilizing it to say how impactful is it, because it's very difficult to truly show the impact of a computer. Let me put it that way. It's so
Yeah.
many dynamics with a computer. It may not be this math score that you're going to get because you're a computer. It may not be, you know what I'm saying? So they get scared about, we're investing all this money. And so they invest money without understanding the return that it brings in a sense of learning and success and just overall tools and access. I mean, businesses buy tools and access so they can work from anywhere. They can do their work. They can be productive and within the business. So there's a lot of things that are costly, but yet they're not having ROI on it. So
they don't appear to, right?
correct.
Yeah. So when you think about what we really need to do to have strategy to accomplish better logistics, actually tailored learning, not just minorly personalized, minorly waggled to be sort of different for, there's a lot that needs to go into that, right? There's the technology, the has to be, probably networks have to be sort of built out. There's probably a refinement inventory of all the software. There's definitely looking all the way under the hood of lesson plans, right? And how you're doing things. Because if you're lecturing every single day of your life, I'm sorry, you've lost those alpha generation kids long ago. So there's all that. And then there's also the people issues. Anytime there's change, there's riots in the street, pitchforks come out. It's a big unions call you up, threaten to beat you up in the parking lot. It's not fun. So let's talk about like actually what the entrance point is. How do you get people to think about a real strategy?
Well, a real strategy obviously should have an enterprise thought process. Okay. Because when I say enterprise thought process, that then it starts incorporating all those various departments that require everyone to be on the same page to implement a tool.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like I said, the lack of strategy, what it creates is a multi-layered, multi-system learning approach that adds way too many complexities. Because I'll tell you right now, teachers will applaud me because they have 30 different things that they have to log into to do their assignments, and they just get confused. And what do I use? Which one do I use? Which one do I need to use? Oh, they're using that one. I'm using this one. So you don't have the same data. So it just creates this massive onion that you're trying to peel back to get to what's actually truly useful. And so the key thing is really just, you got to look at what system as a whole do we want to use, and really say, does this system meet most of all 99% of our needs? I don't think one system is going to meet 100%, but does this system really allow for this instead of just piecemealing or adding on top, and and so your budgets are just going skyrocketing because you just keep adding new resources that you're not really strategically planning to say, is this resource going to take away what we're doing now? Does it change? Is it a one-for-one switch? Is it, those kind of things? So, it just takes some time to really talk it out. It's not a rush decision, unfortunately. It will have to be.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just good.
Well, I don't really find a lot of people take that time. Strategy is sort of off the cuff. The dynamics of involving your board, and you're given 5 minutes to present this, and then you get 10 minutes for that. And, it's all run by Robert's Rules of Order at the board level. When you go in there, it's kind of scary and serious, and everybody runs around in the district and we got a board meeting coming up, freak out, right? Like, but really it takes some serious thoughts, like, and then you have to have like, why are we doing this in the first place? Like, why transform? It's been running like this for 250 years. Why can't we keep school the same as it's always been? Well, it's not working for a preponderance of kids, and I mean over 50% at least. I don't know how it is in Garland, right? I know you guys are super awesome and everything, but if you look at it across the country, I mean, the numbers are just adding up and adding up and adding up. This is not working anymore. We got to change big time. It's not a little dabbling. So I like what you said about strategy. I would like you to tell me a little bit more about, where you think things are really headed for schools and why there's maybe some urgency. Because this is something you and I have talked about before, so I just want other people to hear you talk about it.
Well, I think we're losing kids in a sense, not just because they're just going somewhere else or have it. We're losing kids because we're not connecting with them. We're not giving them the resources or the the challenge of you get to adapt to what we're doing. We're not allowing, we're really, it's just like you when you control your own kids at home, you're like, oh, and then they go out and they're like, oh, go crazy, like, yeah, it's just, you know, we always provide on too much control, but the thing is we have to engage them where they're at. I mean, that's the key thing is that, you know, we can't teach how we taught like we taught when I was in school anymore. That's not how kids learn. That's how maybe I learned at that time, but it's not how kids learn today. We have to have an understanding of what students need today, and what they need today. They're on their cell phones and everything, looking up quick stuff, quick information. I mean, that is available to them right now. And so allowing that shift in mindset to really allow for students just to be engaged other than just
Yeah.
being lectured to. That's not what's working.
Yeah.
And I always say,
Yeah.
well, on the strategic plan too, is that we want to go after 100% of the kids, not just 80%, not just 10%. We want 100%. So whatever system, you have to find a system that's 100% useful. So.
Yeah. And I really think that's a structural thing. And hopefully what we're going to find is enough teachers who are brave in the course of the next, I'd say 5 years, who say to themselves, I was taught to do it this way. Like I was taught to be like the queen of the classroom or the, king of the classroom. And I run you and I speak at you with words coming out of my mouth. And that's how you learn. Right. And I'm going to walk away from that. I don't know that any humans in other fields that just go, I'm going to throw out everything I know and start over. But that's essentially what true metamorphosis is. It's not just the institution. It's not guys like you who are professional technologists going, let's do this here and that there, and this is what we're going to do, connectivity and you're like the ninja of technology, right? It's not guys at the superintendent level only who are going, we're gonna have a goal, we're gonna STEM or something, blah, 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 blah. It's actually down there in the trenches where it's humans changing how they're humaning, right? Like how they're being human. It's not just technology. In order for you to get actually to apply the logistics that are going to bring in the different resources, the different pace, the different things, that human has to be willing to sort of, step and pop, right? Like just
Yeah.
like, okay, then that I'm going to step here because you did that. And then I'm going to go over here, right? They have to be willing to do that. Do you feel like people are starting to get into that groove where they're in Garland? Are people sort of, yeah, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it takes some baby steps. Unfortunately, like you said, it's not a quick, rip the Band-Aid off and we're in this nice system and it's working. There has to be some wins, and I say some wins is that, if you really want, I say give courage to some people that want to take that step and do a pilot and really see what kids and show some progress with some of these kids in a pilot setting to say, here's what my kids can do and are doing. And then that I call it like a little wildfire, not a little wildfire, wildfires do not just happen by some other big wildfire somewhere else. It happens from a spark.
Yeah.
And you have to create that spark for that wildfire to grow, and that's the thing. Someone has to go in there and create the spark, and I challenge people to really go in there and say, hey, I want to be the one that creates that spark and just let it go. It can be a massive wildfire that's a success. And kids are just on flames, just, learning like crazy. And it just kind of, the ecosystem just starts building on each other, especially when it's scheduled and kids are kind of doing that tailored stuff. It's just kind of going, and teachers are just in for the ride right there with them, and that's what's cool about it. They become collaborative units with kids, and not separate teaching and students. It's now a unit, a collaborative unit. So
everybody's going together. I like this conversation. I wish we had a lot more time to talk, right? Because people don't like really, really super long podcasts, too boring for them. but there's a lot more to say. So we should do another one maybe sometime and talk more in depth about what the meaningfulness is of collapsing that individual pace sort of online, I'm over here with my materials studying by myself, and then I turn stuff in, right? In the world of teacher at the front of the classroom, everybody sit down in your chairs, let's get this thing, blah, blah, blah. Those two worlds collapsing together where you're studying and then you go to the classroom and then it's a shorter moment in time and then you come back and then other kids are running around and it's all like this Wild West looking airport flights moving off and everything and coming back. That's new. That's a new concept. To not sacrifice live teaching by using advanced logistics is fabulously new. And it has so many dynamics to talk about. So would you mind that? Would you mind coming back
Yeah.
on my show?
Oh, I'd love to. Love
Okay,
to.
cool. Well, what did I miss out? What did I not say that I should have said that we wanted to talk about? Because we said we wanted to talk, and then what did I forget?
Well, we also call, building design, because we want that
Yeah.
space. So not just the square room is how do you map the space and time, where
Hmm.
kids can actually get to those cohorts and get to working. And that allows for different mapping of a school, and there could be different collaboration spots, different locations. Kids can be moving across the campus all they want and then come together at the cohort time, whatever, or virtual, whatever needs to be done. So just kind of having that flexibility space. And a lot of people talk about that, in building design. If you're going through a bond, you're trying to design schools, and you're like, oh, I want a collaboration space here, a collaboration space. Well, those aren't being used until you actually have a formula like this, you know, because they're just
Yeah.
spaces, they're not necessarily designed for anything else other than just spaces. So,
Yeah.
happy to always work through anyone's challenges with you. I mean, I'm always open to do that. And,
Yeah, and
those
I
are kind
think
of
that
key things.
that's something that is that you have some wisdom in the space use thing, because I've been to that special facility that you guys had there where they had
Mhm.
like it was your extracurricular activity, kids coming in from other schools, and there was like a whole pharmacy unit. There was a fireman unit, and
Yeah, it's our Gilbert 3 Career and Tech Center. So it's where all of
yeah,
our
that was
career and tech
awesome, right?
come.
Yeah, that was awesome. Just being there was awesome. It was beautiful. Um, those kinds of things are super electric for parents. It's very convincing not to homeschool, like
Hmm.
because they're not going to build a little pharmacy center in their home, right? That's not going to happen. But when you talk about space, I mean, there's so much to space right now. I would encourage people who are listening or watching this right now to really think about watching kids today, because if you were to go to school, if you're at home and you've got a beanbag chair and a laying around on the couch, and then maybe you run around and you play in the park or the backyard or whatever, and you do some other things. When you go to school, it's like hard chairs, face forward, human mouths talking at you, and you don't even maybe have dinner with your family. You guys don't talk to each other unless mom yells at you from the other room, like, do your laundry, right? Like, this is very alien environment, and it's not conducive to learning when you're in an alien environment.
Hmm.
So I always picture now when I talk about space homeschool, like, let's have like couches and chairs and little areas where you can like crouch off, and it's like your own little study area, and you get to have a space that's your own. Like, remember lockers, right? Lockers were
Hmm.
always too small to, it's like, come to my locker, right? Like, no, this is my space over here. I have my own chair, and there's a table here, and this is where I always put my backpack or whatever. Um, and then the classrooms themselves would have to be extraordinary experiences, right? They'd have to have like the interactive whiteboard, and they still have the digital signage to say who's flighted where in the hallways, the homerooms, like, so you're always watching the traffic patterns of who's going where. But in those environments, you have the best lab equipments, the drones, the robotics, the esports things, everything that can be hands-on possible. So like actually going to a class, a meeting would be like, oh wow, this is like, it's like going to a movie was for us when we were like, I'm going, I got all my work done, I got it done, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm ready, right? So you would be able to go instead of like the daily grind. Like, this is what we're doing to this generation, is the daily grind. So those are my comments on space. But do you have
Yeah.
final comments on space?
No, it's like shift workers, and then walk over and then you do your thing and into the next
Yeah,
class.
punch
It's,
in.
yeah, I mean, the goal, like I said, the goal is to really transform. I mean, it's just really taking something that we've done for many, many years, and education needs that fire now. I think we really
Yes.
need to take that to that next step. And pandemic really opened a lot of people's eyes. So I think it's the time to really jump in there and really look at how can we do something differently than what we've been doing. Because I think we're going to lose a lot of kids, more and more kids, to that. And we have to create from the academic gap that created from the being at home online, that we have to really step up and change. So this is a perfect time to make those steps
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, I totally think you're right. Well, this has been super fun. We could talk more and more and more.
Yep.
But I want to thank you very much
You're welcome. Thank you.
for being with me and doing this video cast for all of our audience. And thank you, audience, for being with me again for another episode of Learning Council's podcast. This has been your host, Leilani Cawthon. Keep listening, keep learning.